bishop takes d5, and bishop takes d5. And this is very tricky. Now, bishop takes a1 is not good for black, because queen takes a1, and now black's knight is hanging, and after knight b6, black all of a sudden got mated on g7. This is a little unusual. Mate because normally when you go bishop h6, there is always f6, but bishop on d5 does not allow to play f6. So if black cannot play bishop takes a1, they simply have to go knight b6, and after rook b1, white has clear advantage. So this is the, we just reviewed the bishop e6 variation, and one last move left here is a bishop to g4, which we're going to cover quickly here. The last move is bishop g4, but this is simply big advantage for white. We go d5, and if bishop takes f3, then simply bishop takes f3, and after knight e5, bishop g2. This is not good position. Then we go queen b3 and put rooks on d1 and c1, and black is in bad shape. However, if black does not take on f3 and plays knight a5, if they don't take with a bishop on f3 and plays knight a5, then we simply go knight e5 and gaining another tempo. Now bishop has to move, and it cannot go to h5. He may get trapped right away or even a couple of moves later, and the bishop has to go back to c8. That does not look very promising for black. So, giving all this, so I think, having all this in consideration, I think bishop f4, based on those variations, gives white some edge. And remember, this is almost not explored and not studied. Theory has very little of it, and only based on the games that I played. But what I gave you now, it's kind of wider and a wider version of the theoretical publication. So, okay. So now we just covered Grunfeld. Briefly, what can you do in Grunfeld to come out, 1, alive, 2, with a view on to the middle game, and second, maybe even being ambitious. Something you can learn very quick. You can learn it in 10 minutes, or you can learn it in half hour, 10 minutes abbreviated version to play in a pawn minority, and to spend more time you can play this G3 variation, which is a lot more ambitious. In the other opening that we have to cover is when you go d4, sometimes your opponent may go knight f6, c4, d6, knight c3, and they may go knight d7, and when you go knight f3, they go e5. Now, they are not developing bishop on g7. They want to develop bishop on e7. You go bishop g5. Now, in one game, my opponent in this position played g6. Well, he said, oh, if bishop on g5, then I may go g6 and bishop g7, but g6 loses instantly, because we now can play d takes c, and knight takes e5. Simply wins a pawn for white. You can see it quickly. If knight takes e5, queen takes d8, white wins a lot of material. So, correct move is bishop e7. Then we go e3, castle. That's what I would recommend, to go bishop d3, and on c6 move queen c2, and maybe, not maybe, probably, castle long. Now, this is better position for white, and it's very ambitious. And you may go g4 even very next move. Possibly very next move, g4, or if you need to prepare, then you go rook g1 and g4. Well, something like this will be very good for you. If you need to prepare, go h3, fine. a6, d takes e, and now g4. This position is very interesting and good for white. It's dangerous for black to go h6 because after bishop takes f6, knight takes f6, there may be g5 opening the g file quickly. And it's difficult for black to play without h6 because knight cannot move from d7 somewhere because bishop takes f6 and bishop takes h7 wins the pawn. So this position is very playable and okay. Probability of getting is, again, very, very low. Some people played on a higher level, not on very high level, but expert level. They play rarely this opening for black, but you cannot expect to get it frequently. And another subject, relatively wide subject, not one of the major openings against d4, but more popular than counter gambit or knight c6 on second move, it's the Dutch defense, Holland defense, Dutch. So Dutch defense may be played with e6 on d4 first move or with f5. So let's learn it with f5. Now, I would not recommend you to start and learning the sharp variations of e4 gambit. There are two reasons for it. First of all, it's not very clear position after that. And secondly, the first move may be e6. And after c4, f5, then you don't get this position. So why should you learn something you are not surely to get? That's why I want to apply universal approach, that no matter what move order black chooses, we get one universal system. d4, f5, knight f3. I withhold c4 move. I wait with the c4. Now, black has few ways to play. They can go knight f6 on a second move, or they can go with g6. Now, after, we're going to look at both of them. g6 is the Leningrad variation of Dutch defense, and knight f6, sometimes they play Leningrad with the second move knight f6. But if we play bishop g5, that's what I would recommend to play, then g6 does not make sense because position after bishop takes f6 favors white great deal. Then we go e3, knight d2, bishop d3, and we're going to get this kind of a pawn structure. So what you do here, you go queen c2 and castle long, followed by h3 and g4. Now, we cannot develop this much further because I'm showing you the plan because black is likely to castle kingside, and then you go h3 and g4, developing very strong attack. So that's what I would recommend, and you can hardly find someone who will play g6 in this move order. No one will play you d4, f5, knight f3, knight f6, bishop g5. They will not play you g6. It's not a good way to play for black. So the main move here is knight f6. So therefore, I would like to start with it. Knight f6, bishop g5. And here, black has two ways to go. One is knight e4, and second is e6. In both cases, I have very simple system that guarantees you some small advantage. And I remember I recommended this system at some point, recommended to Karpov, and he played in semi-blitz tournament against Topalov, one of the top GMs, and he checkmated him, I think, like under 20 moves. Well, let me tell you the idea of bishop g5 move after e6. Now we go knight to d2. If black plays bishop e7, we play bishop takes f6, bishop takes f6, and pawn e4. That's the idea. Now if white plays, if black plays f takes e, white has very, very strong position. Bishop d3, now followed by queen e2 and castle long. White has very dangerous position, well, black has very dangerous position. So, but if after e4, in this position, black doesn't take on e4, then what can they play? We just went knight d2, black castled, we take on f6 and go e4. If black goes d5, for example, then you go e5. That's what happened, by the way, in Karpov-Topolov's game. Bishop e7, bishop d3, then you go queen e2, you castle long, and rook g1 and g4. White has clear attacking plan, which is very, very dangerous. This is simple to play, but black has other ways to stop white from achieving this result. So f5, knight f3, knight f6, bishop g5. So e6, knight d2. Now that black sees that white wants to take on f6 and go e4, black may play d5. But after d5, you get very simple position to play for white. It's almost symmetrical, but almost symmetrical. But white is way ahead, and they symmetrical only the pawn structure, but not the pieces. You go e3, and after bishop e7 or bishop d6, you go knight e5, and after castling, you go f4. You see, you have symmetrical pawn structure, but you don't have any bad bishops like black has on c8. Your c8 bishop, corresponding bishop to c8, is bishop on g5. If you had bishop on c1, that would have been the maybe equal position, but not with bishop on g5. Then you're going to go bishop d3 and castle short. You have simple position with a better pawn structure, with better pieces position, and after c4 you may have even better pawn structure. Now the reason black cannot afford c5, because after you castle, if white goes c4, you can see that better pieces development will favor white, the opening of the center. So also on c5 you can go c3. That's an easy way to play too. You have advantage in piece placement. Now we're going back and see a couple of other options for black after bishop g5. The main move in this position is knight e4. And it's interesting enough that I have had it every time I played bishop g5, my opponents respond with knight e4, and I played h4. Now, what can black do here? I played few games, and the most ambitious move and probably the most logical move for black here is c5. Believe me, black does not want to take this bishop on g5 because h takes g opens the h file and black may get in trouble real soon. But after c5, I had this position in my game, so I went e3, normal developing move, now queen b6. There's something wrong with the way black is playing here. What is wrong is that black played 2 pawn moves. They played 2 moves with the minor pieces, but that was with the same minor piece, with the knight. That's also a violation of basic principles, and they developed queen in early stage. Well, there are variations in Dutch defense where queen b6 and c5 is very logical. And it seems the same here, but I don't agree. We go knight c3. And it's interesting, I played this and I had tremendous results. This position is extremely dangerous, maybe lost for black, if they accept pawn sec. Actually, it's not a pawn sec, it's sec of 2 pawns. Knight takes e4, pawn takes e4, and knight d2. Notice, none of the black's pieces are developed. One piece that black developed is off the board now. Now, if pawn takes on d4, we just simply ignore it and continue development. Bishop c4, pawn takes e3, pawn takes e3. What is white threatening here? Nothing. What does black have? 2 extra pawns. What's the assessment of position? Black is lost. Why? White's next move, obviously, is going to be castling. How can black finish development? There is no way. White has 2 active bishops on c4 and g5. White has open file f after they castle. And they have also queen that is ready for action by playing queen takes h5. Not to mention that knight is about to come into the game. Black is lost here. For instance, e6 castle. Bishop on g5 is very powerful since black can never play h6. Something like h6, queen h5, checkmate. So that cannot be done. So it's very difficult to play. On move like d5, I remember one of my games was developed like this. Simply knight takes e4. And you see black cannot take neither of these pieces because queen to d8 is a checkmate. Black is not developed at all, in serious trouble, or probably lost. So this is kind of what happens if black starts pawn hunting and violate basic principles. Now, this is like a brief approach I just gave you for playing Dutch. Now, to summarize what we analyze, what I want to say is this. Of course, none of the openings that we went through, they have a complete analysis, detailed analysis. But this is brief introduction and suggestions to play this on those or the other openings. And if you need, it's for someone who doesn't know where to start from. Once you pick those openings and choose these variations, you can you can use books for help if you want to develop further, or do your own research some other way. But that's where you can start from. And that's as much as I can give you as for white repertoire. This is for d4 players. Easy way to get out of the opening with the prospects for the middle game. The plan for the middle game clearly outlined. And we will also develop on a part 2, we're going to develop same opening repertoire and outline for black. Thank you very much.